Stories are opportunities to gloat with glee. My name is Osadumebi, and every week I will tell you a short story written by a Nigerian writer or author. That's the long and short of it. So without much ado, this week's story is by Uneke Enyi, and it's titled The Perfect Score. While in camp, one of the activities slated for the many social nights we were forced to attend was a singing competition. Naturally, I signed up to represent my platoon, Platoon 2. I was one of many who expressed interest in representing. After the first round of auditions, the number of people in contention to compete on behalf of the platoon was reduced to 5, including me. From my estimation, of the 5 remaining, there was just one person I imagined could best me. His name was Michael. With little effort, we were a world apart from the remaining contestants. Michael and I had to audition for a panel of judges made up of fellow platoon members, with Eben, a mutual friend, as lead judge. Given how straightforward the entire process had been, I wondered why we still had to audition for our mates. I was irritated, albeit slightly amused. Michael's preferred song choice was Ed Sheeran's Perfect, a song I disliked, along with the album Divide. Seen as love, or what I understood it to be, makes men do things they may otherwise not prefer to do. I listened to the said album, especially the aforementioned song, several times. And I had to feign liking it because a woman I cared deeply about at the time made me listen. Although I knew the song word for word, it was difficult to appreciate anyone singing it, as the love eventually turned sour. Michael and I were in the same hostel. We were vaguely aware of each other's existence. Beyond a few, hey, and how far? There was barely any conversation between us. Eben, doing his best to look important, asked us both to sing the songs we were likely to perform should either of us be chosen to represent the platoon. Michael went first. He sang wonderfully. I say wonderfully because I was doing my best to positively validate his performance in my head. To be honest, the more he sang, the more annoyed I became. I had 2 songs in my head to sing. One was Chris Brown's New Flame, and the other, Mario's Let Me Love You. I opted for the former. Michael stood aside and let me do my thing. Sure enough, it was everything it was supposed to be. Short, sweet, and visually appealing, because at the end of Brown's verse, I sang that and the chorus, deciding it would be better to keep things brief. I threw in a spin, leading into a knee drop, making the final pose as cocky and as breezy-esque as possible. They had to pick me for sure, or so I thought. The dance move wasn't necessary, but Michael's voice was good enough to require a bit more effort on my part. Eben was impressed with it, and so were the other judges. He even tried to imitate me, a flattering gesture. He deliberated with the other judges, and they came to the conclusion that we were both vocally competent enough to represent the platoon. Since Michael didn't do much performing, I expected to be declared winner. I was wrong. Wrongfully wrong. According to Eben, Perfect was a popular song and was more likely to appeal to the crowd which would gather on the night. His logic was not incorrect, but come on bro, it's New Flame. While listening to him drone on as to why Michael, already smiling to himself, would represent the platoon, my emotions oscillated between anger and then sadness before settling on restrained fury. I nodded and left, refusing to look at him or any of them. The didn't pain me. Evening parade flew by, and the strain of it weakened me enough to avoid thinking about the unfavorable audition which had taken place at midday. I walked to the hostel and slumped into bed. I dozed off immediately but was shortly woken by the sound of an acoustic guitar. Someone was playing while another person sang. I stirred lazily to look in the direction of the music, and to my chagrin, it was Michael. Oh, the nerve of this dude. Hatred. Hatred, ladies and gentlemen, came rushing from within. His voice, beautiful I must admit, was drawing the attention of the others in the hostel, including Peter, the copper at the top side of the bunk opposite mine, whom I had hoped to complain to later on about the audition. Michael was gloating, was he? I snatched up a bucket and headed for the bathroom. The melody of Two Faces' Rainbow, the song they were singing, followed me out. When I returned, the singing had stopped, and Michael, I imagined, had gone early to the venue. The contest was in a few hours. I changed into another set of whites, laced up my grass-stained orange boots and headed out. A large number of coppers had already gathered. I ran into Ayo while trying to find a good spot from which to view the stage. Ayo knew I auditioned to represent the platoon but was unaware of the outcome. As soon as he asked, the floodgates opened. I ranted and raved as I relayed the travesty of justice. He listened quietly and did his best to console me. Shortly after, the MC walked on stage and we all quietened down. The MC decided to call up the platoons in random order. This switch-up soon proved to be a blessing in disguise. On average, the first few performances were terrible. There was a rapper, yes, a rapper in a singing contest, whose lyrics ran away from him. There was a Tiwa Savage knockoff whose vocals were not as good as her choreography. And of course, a singer who failed to realize that the voice in the bathroom should never leave the bathroom. Ayo and I were having a very good laugh. The next act came on stage and began to sing. As he did, an evil smile spread across my face. This dude was from Platoon 5, and his song choice was Ed Sheeran's Perfect. All the hate I felt for the song disappeared into thin air, and I found myself humming along. As the performance progressed, the crowd, following his signal, pulled out their phones, flashlights on, and began waving them in the air. I did not follow suit, but I was all too pleased with the unfolding performance and the reaction from the crowd. The song ended to the sound of thunderous applause. I clapped with gusto. Ladies and gentlemen, I said I clapped with gusto. In that moment, I knew it would not matter what Michael did, and evidently, it didn't. Platoon 2 was the third to the last act. I half expected him to change his song last minute, given what had just happened, but he didn't. He couldn't. He sang Perfect, and it was perfectly boring. The crowd could not hide their disinterest. It seemed as though he chose to perform the song because of how good the preceding performance of the same song was. In a bid to save face, Michael pulled a girl from our platoon on stage, singing the lyrics of the song to her. It did not work. In fact, it was cringe. Ladies and gentlemen, I just did shine teeth. When the results were announced, the first guy who performed Perfect was declared the winner. Given how bad the other performances were, Michael was second runner-up, and I, Prince Uneke Enyi, aka Hoover, was overwhelmed with joy. Even before it became a popular quote, I knew then in my heart, say, miracle not dey tire Jesus. 2 days later, my platoon was declared winner of the street dance contest. My fellow dancers did not think to resist my creative influence, and seeing their humility, God rewarded them. Uneke Enyi is a writer who resides in Abuja and is a banker with one of Nigeria's leading banks. As much as possible, he makes out time to creatively express himself regardless of his busy schedule. You can read more of his work on Medium at Hover and connect with him on Instagram at hover_h and on Twitter at hover_h. Details and links will be in the episode description. If you've got a story you would like to be featured on this podcast, or a published book you want to make into an audiobook, send an email to info@osadumebi.com or send me a message at Osadumebi on either Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter. I look forward to collaborating with you. And if you've enjoyed this week's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend that stories are a good escape for a few minutes each week.